Good day. My name is Vanessa Pineda and I am a second year math physics major in the University of Belize. Today I'll be showing you two types of charge processes and the process of polarization. Have you ever wondered how the charges of different objects came to be? What allows the charge to run from one object to another? And what enables objects to attract and repel each other? In the following slides, you will be able to see some of these things happening as different objects become charged through these different processes. Charge by conduction, charge by induction, and polarization. But first, we should consider several objects. First, a neutral sphere. This sphere is neutral because it contains exactly the same amount of positive and negative charges, as seen here, where you have 3 positive charges and 3 negative charges. Then we should consider a negatively charged rod. This is negatively charged because of excess of electrons, which are negatively charged, as can be seen here. A ground, which is a reservoir for charges, it can accept as much negative charges with little to none of its charge changing. This is typically the Earth. We should also consider that opposite charges attract, as can be seen here, and like charges repel, as can be seen in this diagram. We should also consider atoms. Think of each one of these little objects here as an individual atom. In an atom, we have the nucleus. This contains the protons, which have a positive charge, and the neutrons, which are neutrally charged. And in the outer shell, which is this of the nucleus of the atom, it contains the electrons, which are negatively charged. The nucleus never moves out of place, especially if the atom is in a solid, while the electrons in the outer shells are free to go and leave the atom and come to the atom as needed. Therefore, negative electrons are mobile, whilst positive protons are stationary. Now we can start with charge by conduction. If we will now return to the neutral sphere, if we would make a negatively charged rod be brought to the neutral sphere so that they touch, as stated before, the unlike charges will attract and the alike charges will repel. Note how the negative electrons in the sphere move away from the negative rod, while the positive protons remain the same because they can't move, even though it is attracted to the rod by the positive protons. When touched, the negative electrons in the rod that are attracted to the positive protons in the sphere will be transferred into the sphere, as being portrayed by this diagram. Since the electrons are attracted to the positive photons in the sphere, the negative electrons would then be transferred into the sphere due to conduction. And as the rod is lifted away, it is seen that the once neutral sphere turned negative because of the excess of electrons. The opposite happens if one has a positively charged rod, as seen here. What happens, you may ask, with a positive rod? Well, the different charges will attract, and since they are touching, the electrons will go into the positively charged rod. And as the rod is lifted away, it is noted that the sphere remains positive because of the loss of negatively charged electrons, as stated here. Now we shall continue with charge by induction. Consider for a second time the neutral sphere. If a negatively charged rod is brought close to the sphere, making sure that they don't touch, the alike charges will attract and the unlike charges will repel, as seen. Since we humans are conductors, if a person would touch the sphere, the negative charges that were repelled by the negative rod would be transferred into that person, and the electrons would travel through said person and eventually into the ground, which is a natural reservoir for electrons and whose charge change is immeasurable. As can be seen in this diagram. Note that the negative charges are already repelled from the negative rod. Now if one would touch this sphere, the negative charges, which are the electrons, would be transferred into one and would eventually go into the earth, which being a reservoir, its change would be immeasurable, so that's negligible. Making sure the hand is first moved away, as the negatively charged rod is taken away, it is noticed that the sphere turns positive because of its loss of electrons. Now one would ask, what will happen if we have a positively charged rod? Well, as seen here, the negative charges would be attracted to the positive charges in the rod. If one would do as one had in the first example of charge by induction and touch the sphere, the negative charges present in the body would flow into the sphere. And to gain a constant balance, the body would gather negative charges from the earth, and then that would be transferred into the sphere. As can be seen in this process. If one would touch the sphere, the electrons present in both the person and in the earth will be transferred into the sphere because of the attraction of the positive charges. Making sure that the hand is first moved away. As the rod is lifted, it is noted that the sphere of the turns into a negative charge because of the excess of electrons now present in the sphere. Now you ask, what is the difference between conduction and induction? Well, with a negatively charged rod, the end charge of the sphere turns out to be negative in conduction and positive in induction. With a positively charged rod, the end charge of the sphere turns out to be positive in conduction and negative in induction. Now for the process of polarization. For the third time, we should consider the neutral sphere. If a negative charge rod is brought against the sphere, making sure that they don't touch, the unlike charges will attract and the alike charges will repel, as seen here. Therefore, for a moment, half of the sphere will be positive and the other half will be negative, and the sphere would move towards the rod. As seen here, this half would be positive while this half would be negative, making the charges of the sphere split in half, and the positive half of the sphere would move towards the rod. Remember, this half being positive and this half being negative. Notice, polarization is not a type of charging. It is the mere imbalance of positive and negative charges through the movement in the same object. No electron, or also known as negative charge, is either gained or lost in this process. Now polarization with a positive rod. As seen here, the negative electrons would be attracted to the positive rod, making this side of the sphere positive and this side of the sphere negative. Now you ask, what is the difference between all three? Well, with a negative rod, the end charge of the once neutral sphere will be negative in conduction, positive in induction, and the end charge of the sphere will be both positive and negative in polarization. While with a positive rod, the end charge of the once neutral sphere would be negative in induction, positive in conduction, and both positive and negative in polarization. Any questions?